7:23. Welcome to the special Board of Aldermen meeting, Salado Municipal Building, 301 North Stagecoach Road, Salado, Texas, January 6, 2026, and it is 7:23. Mr. De La Rosa, call the roll.
Mayor Pro Tem, all members are present. You have a quorum.
All right. Well, let's take a moment to pray at your own faith. All right, let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and a salute to the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag, I pledge allegiance to the Texas, one state, under God, one indivisible. Public comments. The Board of Aldermen welcomes comments from citizens on issues and items of concern not on the agenda. Those wishing to speak must sign in before the meeting begins and observe a 5-minute time limit when addressing the board. Speakers will have one opportunity to speak during this time period. Speakers desiring to speak on an agenda item will be allowed to speak when the agenda item is called. Inquiries about matters not listed on the agenda will either be directed to staff or placed on a future agenda for Alderman consideration. I got 3, but you guys want to talk about the workshop on C, correct? Do you want to wait till then, or you want to do it now? Yeah. You want to do it now? Okay. Mike Clifford?
Is this on? I guess it is. Good evening, Salado Alderman. I'm Mike Clifford, Technical Director for the Greater Edwards Aquifer Alliance, or GEA. I work alongside Brian Zabchik from Save Texas Streams to protect Central Texas water resources. On behalf of GEA and all of the Central Texas environmental organizations and landowners, I'd like to encourage the aldermen to vote tonight to submit comments for the Reserve at Salado Creek wastewater permit in advance of the public meeting that will take place here in Salado on January 27th. By now, you've probably seen the map I emailed you that Brian Zabchik presented to you and that is now running in the local news, showing all of the sewage treatment plants that have been authorized by TCEQ upstream of Salado. Developers are trying to build massive developments in North Williamson and Bell counties, polluting Salado Creek, and area developments in North Williamson and Bell counties. They want to take their big profits and move on to the next payday, but you are one of the last lines of defense to prevent this from happening. Contrary to what many say, it isn't too late to keep Salado Creek from being ruined and area drinking water from being fouled by the excess phosphorus, nitrogen, bacteria, and other harmful pollutants that these direct discharges of treated sewage would bring. Salado Creek is unique in that it is mostly dry in the regions where these developers want to dump their treated sewage. It's dry because whatever falls into the creek goes quickly to groundwater, which in turn goes to area wells, including the 8 public water supply wells here in Salado. TCEQ has fallen down on the job by authorizing these wastewater permits, but affected parties like the Village of Salado can submit comments which will help delay these developments. And later, you can participate in the contested case process to tighten pollution limits and force the reuse of effluent rather than dumping it into Salado Creek. It would be one thing if it was just the reserve at Salado Creek and there's 700,000 gallons per day of treated sewage dumping into the creek 5 miles away from here. But coming down the road is the Gerald Landing development that wants to dump an additional 1 million gallons per day of treated sewage at the exact same spot as the reserve at Salado Creek, right at the Bell County line. Then there's South Central's new plant wanting to dump 950,000 gallons per day. Salado Vista wanting to dump 250,000 gallons. plus all the existing developments like Mustang Springs, Salado Center, Gerald Estates, and Salado Creek Meadows that have already had permits granted by TCEQ. TCEQ refuses to take into account cumulative impacts of multiple treated sewage discharges, but Mother Nature doesn't. The more shit you dump into Salado Creek, the more of it will show up in your water supply, period. We would like to work together with the Village of Salado and the Alderman to help educate the community and provide guidance as to how to oppose reserve at Salado Creek and other wastewater permits coming down the pike. I will be forwarding you next week via email GIA's comments that we are submitting to TCEQ as a Word document so that you may use verbiage and diagrams in your own comments to submit to TCEQ. The more comments we all submit, the longer it will take TCEQ to reply to them and the more time we buy to do community outreach, education, and fundraising to protect the creek and the Village of Salado. If you do nothing and just assume someone else will fix the problem, you need only look 20 miles south to the South San Gabriel River to see the future of Salado Creek and the village. The South San Gabriel was completely ruined from Liberty Hills wastewater dumping. That's all my comments, and by the way, if my name sounds familiar, it's because I performed for 10 years in a country band at Beau's Barn Dance Hall right up the street before it relocated to Temple, so I've spent a lot of time in this town and don't want to see it ruined by a bunch of greedy developers. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Zabick?
Howdy, thanks. This is my second time to speak before y'all. Do you have the time clock again, or that kind of helped me? I mean, to pace myself. I want to thank Alderman McDonald for putting up that map just a moment ago. That was the one that we prepared, Mike and I prepared, showing all of the, yeah, that one. I thought that was what we were referring to. Anyway, so yeah, that's what you see. And what you're looking at right now are 12 wastewater discharge permits along Salado Creek that weren't there just a few years ago. The black labels indicate the permits that have already been approved by TCEQ. The yellow labels indicate the ones that are pending with TCEQ. One of those labels actually has since been changed from yellow to black. Mustang Springs has been approved. Save Texas Springs was founded in 1979. Greater Edwards Aquifer Alliance is 20 years old now. We have been working on issues like this for a very, very long time, and we have seen the problems that happen with wastewater discharge permits repeatedly in many parts of central Texas. I can say that this concentration of new discharge permits is one of the highest concentrations in a small area that we have ever seen. Also, too, the combined treatment volume for all of these 12 permits is around 8 million gallons. That is a lot. That is a lot, even compared to, say, like a big city wastewater treatment plant. It would be kind of like if, like, Houston or Dallas had decided to build one of their treatment plants on Salado Creek. We have been through this drill a lot, unfortunately, with TCEQ elsewhere, and one of the things that we have learned is that it really, really helps if the public and local government entities get involved in the process. Mustang Springs got approved with very, very little opposition and, you know, like actually very little public comment, actually. And when TCEQ does not see any comments on a permit, they go ahead and, you know, like sail it on through. When we have been successful in getting more comments from the public and the involvement of local government entities, that forces TCEQ to pause and take a second look at the permit application. And we think that that's really necessary here because not only is this a lot of permits for a small area, relatively small area, with a really high cumulative treatment volume, the permit requirements are not great. The limits, for example, on the amount of phosphorus that can remain in the wastewater after treatment are way too high. The lowest phosphorus limit for any of these permits is 0.15 milligrams per liter. That's around 15 times more than the maximum amount of phosphorus that occurs in Salado Creek. Salado Creek, and that matters because Salado Creek is a pristine stream. What does that mean? Pristine stream has extremely low levels of naturally occurring phosphorus, in addition to other characteristics. Phosphorus is a fertilizer. If you've bought any common fertilizer mixes at Lowe's or Home Depot, you may notice that there are 3 big numbers on the front. Those numbers are for nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. And so fertilizer mixes are basically kind of like a ratio of those 3 elements. Treated wastewater after treatment has phosphorus and nitrogen in it, sometimes at much, much higher levels than what's naturally occurring in the stream. With a low phosphorus stream like the Salado Creek, what you're essentially doing is dumping bags of fertilizer into that creek. Fertilizer fertilizes the growth of plants. Algae is a plant. That's when you start having out-of-control algae growth. That's exactly what's happened, as Mike said, on the South San Gabriel River below the outlet for the City of Liberty Hills wastewater treatment plant. And that's even with Liberty Hill only discharging around 1 million gallons per day of treated wastewater into the South San Gabriel. We're talking about, and again, this would be spread out, I admit, over like a distance, but we're talking about 8 million gallons. And just the ones that are within Bell County, or the discharge outlets within Bell County, you're still talking about a few million just upstream from Salado. So again, these are bad permits. It would really help if the aldermen submit a letter to TCQ on behalf of the city of the village stating its concerns about this permit. Thanks.
Thank you. Patrick Hayden?
Thank you. I am not as eloquent or knowledgeable about the situation as the
Just state your name and address, please.
Patrick Hayden, 713 Eagleview Drive, Salado.
Thanks.
Not as knowledgeable about these gentlemen. I've done some reading. I'm a resident of Salado, and I have 4 young children. We go to the creek all the time, and as a Salado resident, I just want to make sure that our council knows that your residents don't want this, and I hope that you guys do as much as you can in order to stop or prolong whatever it is you can do. I've submitted comments to the TQEC, so that's all I have.
Thank you.
Is there any other public comment?
Tim Fleischer, 912 Cedar Park Circle. For almost 20 years, Salado Village Voice used to publish monthly creek test results. It was done by volunteers. They would test for phosphorus, E. coli, oxygen, dissolved solids, all of those things. And they tested at 7 different points along the Salado Creek, going all the way west to Patterson's Crossing, which is where Florence Road goes over the creek. They would test there. They would test just east of the highway. They would test at Serena Springs, the low water bridge at Mill Creek, and the second low water bridge at Chisholm Trail. And we would publish those every year. At some point, BRA decided that they no longer wanted to pay for that testing, even though the science proved whether the creek was healthy or not. I think that science is how we need to address this program. I think the Village of Salado, Bell County, and BRA need to reinvigorate this. program. I don't think there will be any problem getting the volunteers to actually do the testing. And if we do the testing, there will be no problem with it being published so that everybody knows whether our creek is healthy or not. The second thing, Belk County did not join the Edwards Aquifer rules 35 to 40 years ago, because Belk County at that time was only about 125 to 150,000 people. We were a very rural county, and even though we are part of the Edwards Aquifer, we decided not to adopt those rules. We are now burgeoning on 400 to 500,000 people in the county. We're the new Williamson County. Perhaps it is time for the county, with some instigation at the ground level of a small town, saying maybe we should adopt those rules. It has done a lot to protect the creeks and the rivers of Williamson, Travis, and Bear County, which is all part of the Edwards Aquifer. The third thing is that all of those are outside of the Village of Salado, all of those applications. I don't know what needs to be done for the subdivision ordinances outside of the Village of Salado, but perhaps there needs to be some approaches through the Regional Conservation Plan, which I think for the last 2 years has been put on the back burner. You know, we have the Regional Conservation Plan for the Salado salamander to protect a threatened species. That there is something put in there that instead of just dumping your water into a stream, you use it for land application. I don't know if that is permissible, but I think it is absolutely pursuable. Land application of wastewater is much better than just dumping it into the stream. Even if you have floods and things of that nature which cause problems for sewer treatment plants, when you're putting it on a sponge, which is what land application is, you're putting it in hay fields, you're putting it in cornfields, you're putting in things like that. Those fields have a chance to absorb the toxins before it gets into our groundwater, which is what we all depend on. If we're on Salado water, 50% of it is coming out of the ground. It's coming out of what goes into Salado Creek and then goes into the aquifer. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is there anybody else? All right, we're going to move on to number 2, the workshops. So we're going to move item C up first so we can get our attorney out of here. Mr. De La Rosa.
Okay, Mayor Pro Tem and Alderman, since this is Alderman Dunge's item, let's let him lead this meeting. Our city attorney is here to answer some questions, but if it requires a legal opinion, then we would have to retire into executive session.
Yes.
Yeah, first of all, I want to thank the folks that have come up and expressed their concerns on this matter. Salado Creek is by far the jewel of our village. We have to protect it. The example that was discussed about what has happened south of us, I think we need to learn from our brothers. I put this together because I think photos are more impactful than, say, 1,000 words versus me trying to articulate, but this is what we're trying to prevent. I took this photo on January 2nd, 2026, after the last Alderman meeting, and bringing this in all the emails and from the constituents and folks that have brought this to my attention. That is AI photo generated, just be clear, but there's nothing clear about it. that is what, I know that looks extreme and it's, an AI photo, but the reality is we have seen this south of us. This could very well be the reality. Everything that was brought up, I'm not an environmental science, I'm an engineer, but I'm not an environmental engineer, but it is very easy to see with that many gallons of water it is treated, but phosphorus and nitrate, we very well could end up here. Out of everything on the agenda, I think by far, we spent a lot of time on other agenda items tonight, but this one is by far, I think, the most long-term important to our community. I wouldn't want my kids swimming in this creek, but that's what it has. Now, I see where folks are saying, why are we worried about this? They don't have the permits to even get water. They're going to get permits for water. But these developers are getting ahead of this. If they already have their permits to dump the sewage way ahead of time, then suddenly they get water and the spigots all turn on and we get the waste. And our quality of life here suffers. Unfortunately, there's not a lot we can do, except I think we should absolutely put a proclamation together as a Board of Aldermen. I have reached out and I am encouraging citizens to reach out. I have reached out to Brad Buckley, our state representative. He is, and at that level is where this really needs to be addressed to really get legislation to change. I have done, what research I have done, I asked, what is really truly best in practice? Well, the EPA, from a total phosphorus level, we're allowing 0.15. The EPA, best practice would be 0.037. Nitrogen, TCEQ is saying it's okay to put 6 milligrams per liter. EPA is saying 0.69 is best practice. So I would like to hear the other aldermen, but I feel like by far this is the biggest impact to our community, the most important. I don't want to be here 20 years from now, 30 years, because there may take them a while before we have something that anywhere approaches what this looks like. But reality is, I don't want to be looking back and saying we did nothing. And this is very concerning. Once again, I think we've gotten proven facts of south of us and our brother south. Liberty Hill, what they did to the San Gabriel is a reality. I know Liberty Hill is re-looking at some of these things because they realize the impact. Let's not make those same mistakes.
All right. Alderman McDonald, do you have anything?
Yeah, actually, just general question. It's about our own practices here too. Good presentation. Our wastewater that we currently process here, where do we place our wastewater at this point in time through our sewer plant?
Yeah, there's a tributary adjacent to the wastewater treatment plant, which is on the northeast section of the Sanctuary East tract. So Floral Street, where it makes a 90-degree turn at the Methodist Church area,
Yes,
it is probably within half a mile from that location to the southeast.
Based on Mr. Fleischer's sponge analogy, to be direct, are we utilizing earth as a sponge analogy, or are we putting that into a waterway?
It's a waterway. It's a dry creek until it's not, until it can get a lot of rain.
So in simple terms, we're functionally doing the same thing at this point in time.
We are.
And it does feel hypocritical. However, what we know now, we didn't know 10, 15 years ago. Allowing us to continue to what's death by 1,000 paper cuts, allowing that to occur is kind of the best analogy of that. I also think as a Board of Aldermen going forward, as we look at better wastewater treatment, we need to change our practice and adhere to a higher standard as well.
So my second question would be, So my second question is, if I may request, can we please put up the map that was brought up during public comments regarding what, thank you, perfect. And this is just a general knowledge question for all of us in the community at large when they can watch this later. Any of these permits, is there a timeline on these permits? In other words, do they last, are they indefinite, or do they have a period of time that they must, quote unquote, perform in before they maybe expire? These are questions I have.
Yeah, they do expire. I can't recall whether it's 4 years or 5 years, but it's in that time period. But they do every so many years, and it's not every 2 or 3, it's literally 4 or 5 years.
Yes, sir.
They do come up for renewal. If there's any reasons out of the violations that you might have to do TCEQ or the state environmental agencies that take samples, they can revisit your permitting parameters, your effluent parameters. In other words, what are you discharging and at what levels? Just like Alderman Dunge noted, some of these levels they can be modified by the state's environmental agency.
Got it. And my last question before I continue, let the board ask questions. Based on our own facility in and of itself, have we had any situations where we've had excessive rain and it caused our facility to, at any point, to wash into the creek untreated? Have we had any problems of our own here based on natural phenomena such as deluge of rainfall, for example?
No, you've had some equipment failures. I don't think that they rose to the level that we saw enforcement, but they're certainly reported.
Yes.
So there are times, because sewer plants, you submit a monthly discharge report, and what you do is you note if you have any excursions, any violations, and they are monitored by the state. So it's a self-reporting. You don't report, you get caught. The fines are very steep, and operators that falsify documents can be prosecuted and go to jail. So,
I'm sorry, my last follow-up question is, to your opinion, just your opinion, based on the recommendation of, say, collecting this water and then putting it out into the ground, in other words, spraying it as the ground would sponge up, as Mr. Fleischer was talking about, because I kind of like that idea. My question is, is there a cost prohibitive moment there for these developers of that nature to be able to collect? In other words, what would it take for us to take our 250,000 gallons? What would it cost for us, in your mind, in simple terms, for us to do exactly that? In other words, live by the language for which we are asking.
there are communities, there's mud districts specifically that do this, that they'll actually capture the water through purple pipe. It's actually reutilized because if the treatment plant discharge works the way it's supposed to be, the discharge, the effluent, is better than the water quality, better than the potable water that you consume.
Better than us would be awesome.
It can be, and it should be. That is what you work toward. To retrofit even a plant like ours,
Yes, sir.
is generally cost prohibitive. It's very costly because the return, it goes on areas, playgrounds, golf courses, that generate little to no revenue. If it's developed as part of a master development, like a mud and all the infrastructure goes in, that cost is greatly reduced, and then you've got the constituent base that actually is maintaining that.
So and my presumption is that even if it was cost prohibitive and we wanted to do it anyway, at the end of the day, that would be a cost that would be consumed by the user, at the end user at the end of the day, the household or the business.
Yeah, somebody would have to pay for it.
Somebody will pay for it.
Yes.
Okay. No further questions. Thank you.
Alderman Lancer?
Can I give a point of information? Reusing the water.
Let these guys finish up first. Yep.
Thank you.
Well, can y'all hear me with this? Is this on? It's really great to hear something about a vision and looking forward to Salado's future rather than mired in problems that we seem to find ourselves in all the time. And hopefully that will be changing in the future. We'll be able to look more towards the future and less towards our daily burden. Yeah, I do believe. Thank you, Neil, for putting this on here. Thank you guys for showing up. It's been a career in commercial development and land development. 12 subdivisions from 3,000 homes to a few hundred, most of that time, several muds. Mechanically, we can make effluent better than this. And Michael McDonald's right, Alderman McDonald's right. It's just a matter of cost and who's going to pay for that. And I do think it's important, very important to preserve our streams, and very important to utilize water in a prudent fashion. And I'm definitely for producing some information to TCEQ on Salado Creek and doing what we can to ensure, even inside the village of Salado, that we can perhaps revise or adjust what our expectations are or requirements are for effluent going into the creek. Water is a really, really big problem, and people like to talk about it, but there's a cost associated with everything you're doing. Like I could say that kind of on my soapbox, but there's water out there even today. It's just how much you want to pay for it to get it out of the ground and refine it. That's the issue. How much of that do we as taxpayers and citizens of the community want to pay? It's part of our responsibility. It doesn't stop right here. It doesn't start here either. We're part of the machine. And I think Alderman Dunch is correct. At the highest level, we have TCEQ for those. Most of y'all are probably familiar with them today, which is a state promulgated entity run by the state, controlled by the state. They are the police force of water quality, environmental quality. And if they're not doing their job on a micro basis or on a much larger basis, not only do we need to be proactive in it up here, but the citizens do too. And those gentlemen are very, very correct that talked. If you don't take the time, invest the time to get concerned and ask questions and talk about your community and the other valuable things you want to protect, the inference for TCEQ is, well, it's just not that big a deal. And they won't look as hard at it as they possibly could. Do the standards need to be raised across the board for discharge into creeks? Probably so, most likely so. How's that going to happen? That's going to happen by knocking on Senator Buckland.
Yeah, Brad Buckley.
Yeah,
yep.
yeah.
It starts there. And
Mr.
I already
Buckley,
gave him
Dr.
word.
Buckley.
I already gave Brad that look out, you're going to get probably flooded with emails. So, anyway.
So we really need to have the people get involved with that. The state needs to hear more from citizens about that. The communities, it's always a problem. And TCEQ has to be basically told we want a tighter set of regulations for these creeks, and not excuse me, and be open to that. State's not going to stop getting migration of people into Texas. That attrition isn't happening in Texas. We're getting more people all the time. So the problem's not going away. It's going to get worse. And rivers and streams are extremely important to quality of life. botanical life, marine life, all of the above. So I just want to say that while and I think these aldermen will take a strong interest in seeing what we could do to help Salado and the rest, it only works if the politicians at the state level get behind TCEQ and push them and say, pick it up. Pick it up. If the citizens understand they're going to have to pay for part of that, but pick it up. Developers, you're going to have to pick it up too. If you're going to pass that on, well, that's part of the cost. That's part of the cost of living today. I can't think of many things that are more important in life than water. I'd love to have that conversation if you think otherwise. So I want to see that happen. Would like to talk to y'all sometime over lunch or something and understand more about your organization and the rest. Because I do think it's a growing concern and it's a serious concern, and it's certainly worth our time, not only this board's time, but the citizens of this community. So I'm encouraging people to show up for the 27th and show TCEQ we really care. And I think there's some people I have in mind that are either recently retired or long-time servants in the water industry that can also help us with that are residents or nearby friends from here. And I promise you they'll reach out and deal with them too. So I'm off my soapbox. That's a very important issue though. You can, just like Neil said, all these other things will work themselves out, but that's a problem that will only get worse, guaranteed, if we don't do more to help it. So that's all I had to say. Sorry it took so long, but pretty passionate about that. I think it's very important. And I do believe there can be a compromise between development and the citizens. I really do. Responsible development is what I'm talking about. And I do think getting behind TCQ and pushing them is the best approach we have.
Okay. Thank you. Alderman Sandor.
So, I think that was well said. Thank you, both of you, everybody. I think the whole board really is behind this. So I'll tell you a little bit about me. First of all, I don't think all developers are greedy. I don't consider myself that way, and I'm one. I think we all have to remember everything that Mr. Lassiter said. Mainly what I want to point out is a couple of things. I have a lot of friends who live in homes that are in subdivisions. I presume some people in here probably do also. Developers do not buy land to develop them unless there is a demand for an end user. And so, so with that said, I take a little bit of exception to the greedy language. That was very direct, and I don't appreciate that. But I am an avid outdoorsman, and I've lived here for 17 years, and I've raised my kids here, and we play in the creek and swim in the creek, and I love that creek. And I fish and I hunt. And so it's important for me that when we do harvest something, that it comes from clean nature, and I love to protect nature. And also as a developer, I'm personally go out and wrap ribbons around trees to make sure that my tractors don't knock them over because I love the trees. So I don't think all of us are greedy. The point beyond that is that I learned after watching Mr. Zobject yesterday when I was at the meeting, the Bell County Commissioners Court workshop on this exact item, I learned a lot. I learned that after the meeting, I did a little bit of research and had some conversations and found out to their point that the effluent actually can be made far better than what the standards are today. So that needs to be the real argument. I mean, I'm sure there's several, but I think what I want y'all to hear is we're behind you. And I told you, actually, I took a knee before they adjourned the meeting and told you to your face that I promised you that this board would produce a letter on behalf of the Village of Salado. Did I not say that? I did, and I'm a man of my word. You will get that letter. We will all take a look at it once it's drafted and make sure that we agree to it and that it represents Salado well. But yes, the qualities to which that effluent becomes, it needs to be challenged at a great depth. And I think that that's what y'all are after also, right? I don't think just putting it on farmland is going to be the total end result, because I think there's some cons to that too. We learned yesterday in Commissioner's Court, potentially. I haven't made it that far, but we're behind you. No one wants to ruin Salado Creek or any creek, or not, at least I don't, not any creek or stream or forest or any of that stuff. There just needs to be a better way to do it, and it will cost developers more, and it is what it is, 2026. It costs more to develop today than it did last year, and that's always been that way. So if it's what's best for human beings and for our environment, then that should be the focus, and it would be for me. So that's it.
No, great points, everybody. I mean, I appreciate all the comments. Appreciate you guys coming here. I do believe we will be probably direct Mr. De La Rosa to do a proclamation here in the future, get it looked up before as soon as we can with Mr. Katz's legal advice. And but great presentation. I mean, that creek is, I got my grandkids, they come down all the time, they swim in it, I'm in it all the time. So I agree with you. So moving on, any public comments? He was up first. He had his hand waving a while ago.
Sorry to take some more of your time, but we actually have answers to a number of the questions or points that you mentioned, and so I want to go ahead and pass those along. First of all, I forgot to identify myself at the beginning. My name is Brian Zopchik. I'm the Advocacy Director at Save Texas Streams, but I'm also here, too, as a Bell County resident. I live on my family's farm east of Temple in the community of Zopchikville, where I grew up, and I come to Salado a lot. And so even though I'm not a resident here, you know, like Salado means a lot to me too, as I think it means to all Bell County residents. There are two types of wastewater permits that TCQ issues. One is the discharge permit, and the other is the application permit, which I call actually an irrigation permit because most people aren't familiar with the term application. But the irrigation permit is known by the initials of that program, TLAP or TLAP. So you'll hear that phrase a lot. The TLAP permit, what you do with the water, there are two options. The basic TLAP permit, you have to have land that you can irrigate your treated wastewater onto. That means either buying or leasing the land. And I will be completely upfront on this. The main cost for doing that is the cost of the land. And that is a problem in rapidly growing communities because land prices go up very quickly. The second option for that is for a TLAP permit, or actually honestly for a discharge permit, is to do reuse. In order to do that, you have to get a separate authorization from TCEQ. It's called a Chapter 210 authorization for the beneficial reuse of wastewater. And that's when you do the purple pipe. Purple pipe can get really expensive, but it also too, basically it solves a problem that y'all have been talking about. It creates a new water supply. You don't have to pull as much water out of Stillhouse or out of Belton or out of the Edwards Aquifer because you are reusing your treated wastewater to water lawns or to water golf courses or to water football fields. And this is very feasible in this location. It might be too expensive at this point for the Village of Salado to get the land for a TLAP irrigation field, but it's not too expensive at this point for all of these subdivisions that are being planned along Salado Creek. How do we know that? Because there actually is one TLAP permit that is being applied for on Salado Creek right now. That map that you've seen, I've actually updated it, where you see Gerald Landing and then the label where it says Salado Creek. I've actually added a green dot with a green label at that place for a subdivision that is called Atlas Ranch. And they have applied not for a discharge permit, but for a TLAP irrigation permit with a very large volume, like a 700 or 725,000 gallons there. So that is proof that you can do an irrigation permit. You can, at least one developer has figured out that it is cost effective for them to do an irrigation permit on Salado Creek. If they can figure out how to do it, then I think the other developers should be able to do it too. I want to stress, because one of the criticisms of environmental groups like ours is that we're anti-development. We're not. But we do believe that development needs to be done in a smart and responsible manner. you know, like, these subdivisions are probably going to happen anyway, but they can happen in a way that preserves the things that we really love about Salado Creek. Two last technical points I want to address. Discharge permits, he was correct, they have to be renewed every 5 years. TCQ never, you know, like, decides, okay, we're not going to renew the permit. They always renew the discharge permits. But however, it can take, the renewal can drag on. There are two lessons to learn from the Liberty Hill experience on the South San Gabriel River. The second, we haven't really mentioned. The second is that TCQ commissioners really insisted on a tighter phosphorus limit when they renewed the permit last year. And it was renewed with a limit of 0.02 milligrams per liter, which is actually even lower than that EPA number that you were talking about. So even TCQ's commissioners have acknowledged that the South San Gabriel River, which has the same characteristics as the Salado Creek, needed a stricter phosphorus limit. Finally, your bottled water, yeah, the treated wastewater may be treated to drinking water standards. But guess what? Your treated water probably contains more nitrogen and phosphorus than Salado Creek can absorb. This isn't about drinking water standards. This is about wastewater standards. Thanks.
Thank you.
In 2015, Tim Fleischer again. In 2015, when the Village of Salado signed an agreement with Sanctuary, part of that agreement was that Sanctuary had the rights to every bit of effluent that comes out of the Salado sewer system. They have never claimed it. They have never taken the rights to it. Perhaps it's time for there to be new discussion about, you wanted the water. You told us you were going to put the water in your landscape. They didn't do that in the apartment complex. They applied for a well water permit and were turned down. And they had to buy retail priced water for Water's Edge. They would not have had to do that had they claimed the right to the 200,000 gallons per day, which was the maximum limit that our current sewer system does. They have the rights to it. We gave it to them. They only need to put in infrastructure to get it to the parts of their development that they want to put it on the landscape and back through what they call the creek, the 7 creeks. There are not 7 creeks. 7 lakes. There are not 7 lakes. But through their development. It's in a 10-year-old agreement. I'm not sure if any of y'all were aware of that. The only reason I'm aware of it is because I was here when it happened.
Okay, thank you. Any other public comment? All right, we have another question for
Yeah, back to the Liberty Hill one. You said it's at 0.02 with the Liberty Hill. I knew they made adjustments in that. I didn't know. Do you know what the limit was prior? Because of the affluent, I know they made, this is where I was saying we got to learn from our partners in the South. If you don't know, I'll find out. But.
One quick thing to add on what Brian said is that second, or the latest drop to 0.02 was TCEQ didn't just do that of their own volition. There was a landowner who put them before, in 74.
Correct.
She won a judgment from the administrative law judge, and the administrative law judge set it down to 0.015, even lower, and then TCEQ commissioner came back and said, well, the state of the art for wastewater treatment, that might be a little tough, so they set it to 0.02, but it was still 7.5 times lower than it was before, so we were happy about that. The only problem now is that it's after the fact, and the river's in terrible condition, and their volumes are so high, and Liberty Hill is not complying. That's the other problem.
Thank you.
Thank you. You guys have anything else? So I guess we're good with,
Can I make a motion? That's valid. Okay.
Well, you can go ahead and, we're gonna say the same thing if you go ahead.
No, I'll just say,
Come over to
so
proclamation.
to come up with some proclamation that we can agree on. And
Yeah, you can have that discussion, and we're gonna incorporate it, because I've already prepared the draft agenda, but I've got to post it by Friday. So, we can work on it this week, so, I mean, I just need, maybe this handout you gave me, the starting point.
well, I took the liberty to take a first draft of this. I don't know if we're going to need, I think I would like to see us come together as a united front. I think we're all aligned on a proclamation from the board. I think that helps build the case. I think we're hopefully all aligned with that. But I think sensitivity of this this has to be in the support case ideally before the January 27th. So why I'm a little bit on the urgency side that if we're going to be put in a proclamation, I think that would be beneficial to have that prior to the January 27th. So we can add it to the next agenda, to the next board meeting to review a final draft that we can submit, because we're meeting on the 15th, right?
We'll meet on the 15th, so that was my intent, that we would have something for you, part of that, or for that meeting. Any tweaking, anything else that we need to do, we can do, give us direction at that point. So, yeah, we may have to call another meeting because of the potential road bond election. So we may, because we've got to make some decisions pretty soon on that also. So the 15th may not be the last meeting.
Okay.
Nothing else. All right, we're gonna move up to, A, discussion on a potential May 2026 bond election for roadway improvements and related drainage improvements. Mr. Delarosa.
Okay,
Thank you, Mr. Katz.
Gregory Miller, our bond counsel with Bickerstaff, is here. He's going to walk you through this. Recently, I did get a draft copy of the roadway assessment that MRB is conducting. So that assessment is it's nearing completion. We will get that finalized, and I just got to spend some days this week to get it done so we can have a meeting on this. But this is some information that Mr. Miller is going to go over with you regarding the bond election. Should we decide to call it, because whatever's going to happen, that time is coming up that you've got to call that election sometime February or March. So.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, board members, Gregory Miller, Bickerstaff, Heath, Delgado Costa. It's very good to see you again. What Mr. De La Rosa just handed out was a timeline for an upcoming bond election. The milestones we tried to indicate for y'all are deadlines for calling the election, deadlines for posting the statutory notices at the election itself, and then canvassing the results of that election. And so I'm glad to go over this with y'all. Hopefully it's very self-explanatory. One thing that I would kind of just like to leave with y'all is that one of the big things up front, of course, is crafting the proposition language. And so I don't know procedurally how y'all want to do that. If you want to give direction to staff and have us come up with a draft or something and present it, or if you want to have a workshop or something like that. And I confess I'm not really aware of all that you want to fund with a potential election, but as you can imagine, we need to kind of give it close review to make sure it conforms with the statutory requirements. And like I said, I don't know how you want to procedurally have a workshop or whatever you want to do, but the last day to order the election would be February 3rd.
John, do you have anything?
I'm going to hold my comments for the end.
So by February 13th, which is pretty much around the corner here, would we at that point have to have all the details of what we want and what we're asking for, dollar amount, what the tax impact would be, or is it just saying that we want this to be a road bond put on the ballot?
It would be the whole order calling the election, so it would include the exact proposition language and then the required tax information and we call it the voter information document.
Then I have no idea how we'll get there because we haven't seen the results that MRB is putting together. We have a lot of financial simulations to be looking at what the tax impact would be on constituents, so I can't imagine we don't need some type of workshop. Just my 2 cents on it.
You got anything other than that?
Agreed. Good deal.
Alderman Sanders?
Yeah, I also do not yet understand how much and what for we need all of this money for. Has that been totally presented to us before now?
No, sir, no.
We haven't made it that far.
Yeah, we haven't made it that far.
So we're just kind of having a time crunch again.
Correct.
Okay, so yeah, I'll be anxious to see the data and help make some decisions on that.
Yes, sir. And that's why I was anticipating we may call special call meetings, and maybe we say on Thursday, January 22nd, January 29th. February the 5th is the first meeting, February. So we might meet earlier in the week, or maybe have 2 meetings in the week. We need to try. So we have all the roads assessed, and what I don't know yet is, and this is what I need to spend some time with Solomon this week, is what is that price tag for all the roads?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, when I've done these kind of projects, it is never done, and we don't issue bonds for everything at one time. Will be is what is your tolerance level? Is it, let's say it's 40 million. Okay, you issue 10 millions over 4 phases, and how far the phases spread apart, and you only draw down on the bonds, take it to the voters one time. But here's what it's going to do: when we go out, these roads are going to be assessed on a standard that it's objective. it's and you will prioritize. So if you follow that recommendation, you won't be moving streets around. You can a little bit, but for the most part, which are the main thoroughfares, and are they the ones that are being handled first? And it may be that you're not going to want to issue 40 minutes. You're going to, what is that cost? But once we have an idea, we can have our financial advisor, and I've had that conversation with her last week, that Mr. Miller would be here. We can start running those numbers for you. So we've got a couple of weeks, not a lot of time to get it done, but we can certainly get it done. So when you call the election, you'll know exactly how much money you're going to ask for and how many phases you'd like to see it out, right? If you'll know, some school districts, I just read something here recently, they just started a project and the bonds were voted by the voters in 2019. And here we are, 2026. So it is not uncommon for it to be a long phase, but at least it gives the constituents, our citizens, when their roads are going to be addressed. Right? Now, you can also issue a bond of funding to make some point repairs and some others, just to kind of a band-aid approach until that road is rehabilitated. Some of it Gregory included drainage improvements that are deteriorating the roadway, that if you don't do the repairs there, the road's not going to last very long. So we're not doing a lot of
good money against bad.
Yeah. So in other words, there are some areas that we're just going to have to identify. So that is the pathway. So you might recall when we issued the task order, we knew we were going to get the information sometime in January. It was always going to be a short window.
Does that answer your question? I thought you asked the question.
No?
Oh, okay. Right.
Okay, yeah, so, thank
Sorry.
you for giving me, thank you for allowing me to come last on this. So in simple terms, what I'd like to make a recommendation and ask the question recommendation is, regardless of what the numbers are, we can have the fundamental language structure kind of in place where we fill in the data as necessary based on what we get from Mr. Solomon and what is recommended by our bond counsel. Am I saying that properly? Can we do such things?
Yes.
We can pre-prep that in advance. We can all see what that looks like, first of all. Second part of that is, based on what you're talking about, staggered conversation based on the money piece, and I'll use the word triaging of our roads. In other words, what needs it now, what can wait 3 years, 5 years, whatever the conversation is. Just to be respectful of the board, I generally spoke about this some months ago when we talked about the tax note versus the GO bonds, when I gave a pseudo PowerPoint by death presentation. Same general idea is what we're talking about now. Or we can, once we have that, and once we know what we need, we can then quickly crunch the numbers, and you'll know what you're generally going to need per project as you're talking about, in the meaning the taxpayer is going to know what it's going to cost them, maybe even on the per household conversation. Another estimate.
And you might recall that when we look at an opinion of probable cost,
Yes.
depending on which phase of that road is going to be done in what time period,
Yep.
it could be 5 years out, we will put in a inflation cost, just like TxDOT does, because that's where most cities fail. They say it's 40 million when they should have been planning for 75 million.
Right. And that's what, that was part of the conversation.
Construction costs continue to go up.
Plus, a lot of our roads are deteriorating, and if we wait too long, it's going to cost more because they're deteriorating.
Absolutely.
And last but not least, I am a big fan, always, of the GO bond conversation, taking the taxpayers, because let them decide what they want to do. That's really what it comes down to. So thank you, no further comments.
And most importantly, I think the citizens need to know they get to vote on this.
That's exactly right.
Right? We are preparing a package for them to see, for them to decide. It's their roads, they drive on them, they live here. Do you want to take on this debt and see that you're actually going to get these roadways improved?
All right. Okay. Is there any public comment? No? Okay.
All right, great. So any questions y'all have, please send them my way. Here in the conversation that y'all were just having, one thing we could send to Manny, he can distribute to y'all, and you've already seen it. It's what goes into that voter information document. So it's what sort of tax information that you'll be expected to have available, you know, at least by the time you call that election, just so you kind of get a sense of what's going to be required there. And another thing that we can get into later on is there's some do's and don'ts for elected officials with regards to the legal term is advocacy for election measures, and then we can get into that as we get closer. Should y'all go down the road, it's pretty common sensical type stuff, but we'll go over stuff like that. So any questions you have, just send them my way. Send them through Manny. We'll get you what you need.
But before we, I think what's really going to be important is for our constituents is, and I really feel like this is, the May election will be here sooner than you know it, right? Time just flies. But making sure once we get the numbers and get that in is the true education. And I'm hoping that was it MRB has got the photos that show these roads and why we're saying this. Why are we saying this is important? Because I mean, I think there's going to have to be some town halls and I think we're going to, as aldermen, are going to have to do our part. There's 950 homes, but I want to make sure all of our constituents are fully educated going when they go in to vote.
And it would be good to have those town halls after we have called the election. Our engineers would be here. They'll walk you through the three assessments or the three methodologies that we looked at. I chose the one that was that had a that the scale was measurable by very objective. It's got a scale instead of being very. It was very objective rather than subjective. We didn't want them. Well, this is what it looked like. No, we took photo. I mean, it was a very detailed assessment based on a study that we did that we utilized. But those having our engineers walking through, creating some of these exhibits of what it is, and explaining how we came to that scale, how they were rated, was certainly giving some peace of mind that it was done methodically.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's going to be important. That's really relayed to constituents. So, okay, that's my name.
Sorry.
Are the voters going to have an opportunity to look at options at different levels that they might approve, or are they just going to have one big grand scope of work for X amount of millions of dollars to be used over, fill in the blank on a term?
You'll determine that. Mm-hmm. Yeah. If I understand the question right, you'll determine how much of these roads you can take on with those roads based on those roads will already be listed, and there'll be a dollar price up to a certain point, and here's the aggregate cost for those.
So when they get to the ballot, they'll have more than one option they could vote for potentially, or not?
It'll be one.
Just one.
Yes, just one. Yes, one.
That's gonna be fun. Okay.
That's why it's important, I think, we get the right litmus test. And unfortunately, we have to put what it is on the ballot by February 13th.
Right.
So it's not like we have enough time to really get a pulse on the constituents and what their appetites for. So this is challenging, to say the least.
I'd like to simply add, it would be probably, as far as people, we're all visual creatures on this conversation, as the handouts and what we do here. I would make a recommendation very lightly to create a map of triage. In other words, this zone's going to get recommended to be done first, or by numbers, or by the letter. So that way everybody knows, okay, so we do this, I'm going to say yes to this, but I also know they're going to do A, B, and C first in this area, and then they're going to wait, and then we're going to do, and then follow on and follow on and follow on until we complete the project. And I think that makes good sense for everybody to be able to see that. I think there's value in that.
And I'm sorry to interrupt, if I could just hit something out there.
Yes,
to when doing the education,
yep.
Which is what this is, what it sounds like you're talking about.
Yep.
There's this concept of contract with the voters, and the idea is that if you say we're going to issue $50 million and we're going to do the road in your neighborhood first, we're going to expand this road over here from 2 lanes to 6 lanes, and that is, you state that as a fact, right? You're essentially forming a contract with the folks who are going to vote for that.
Yep.
So it's important to say this is what we're thinking we want to do. This is as of today, this is what we're thinking it's going to look like. But the second you start making ironclad promises, and you have to adjust that later on down the road after the bonds get approved, that's where, that's, you see where I'm going with this. It gets a little, you don't want to put yourself in a box. You don't want to make voters feel like, I only voted for this because they said they were doing my road first, and here they are doing this one. You don't want any voters feeling like they've been duped, basically. And as you know, a lot of facts can change, or, oh no, we got to actually do this road first. This flood just happened. So, if you say you're going to do this street here, right, but this is going to be your first street, this is your priority, but something catastrophic happens to this one here, you have to do this one first. Well, you just don't want to put yourself in a position where you, right.
I follow that, Mr. President. Or I'm making a statement that isn't it incumbent upon this board and through this request to the community that we put that articulation somewhere in that conversation too as well.
Yep, and so the way that we've seen it done is you'll have a map, like you said, for visual people, we'll have a map, and you might categorize roads, red, yellow, green, based on their status, and you can say, these are our priorities, and at the bottom you have a note, this is not a contract with the voters, but you can indicate priorities, and the only reason I go on about these are the kind of things that make me nervous, so I just want to make sure that we have time to kind of go through that.
Mr. Miller, I like making you nervous.
I know, right? It's a lot. People do that because it's funny to watch. So,
right on. Thank you, Mr. Miller.
When do we have another opportunity to do this aside from right now in this May? When would be our next opportunity?
If there's an election in November, let's say if the county has something, you can certainly call it then.
And that would be in August. You need to call it by August.
It's worth considering.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
That would just put the whole bill.
It'll be the midterm elections, right? So there'll be big turnout at those.
I guess the school would be there too, probably, right?
Pardon me?
For splitting the cost of the.
No, the school's in May. I mean, but it'll be the county. But in November 2026 or midterm elections, so there'll be elections at the county. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm nervous to push on something too hard and not be able to feel really good. Oh yeah, I mean, I really want to give the voters the same thing that I think this board does and everybody else does. I mean, we don't want to make a mistake with something like that. We want them to give them everything that we possibly can, give them time to digest that, and when they get to the polls, it's their decision. We'll act on it if they say yes, and if not, we'll bring it back up some other time.
I'm going to piggyback that and say there's some value to your comments. I would think to the administration in some aspects, to bond council, to everybody else, to say, hey, we have time to do the right triage on this. Now we can put a good plan together so the voter, buyer, understands what we're doing in advance, so we can publish that really early, so that way they're riding all the way into the election season on November, knowing full well that this is not being a fast rush.
Yeah, we may have to take a very hard look at that, gentlemen, because that's just a big deal. And like when this data, which I understand is very close to being complete, I've seen some of it, but like once it's presented to this board, I personally am going to want to get in a vehicle.
Same here.
With a team of knowledgeable experts that were responsible for creating the data, or at least a competent person from their team. I want to see it, and I want to agree to their analysis so that I can stand behind it. If we're going to ask people to vote for many millions of dollars worth of road work, these roads are terrible. They've got to be repaired. I don't think that's a surprise to most people, but I think also the people who, if they don't care for whatever their reason are, it would give us some time to say, hey, but look at this, maybe you should care more. And also, look at how the math works. Maybe it's not going to be as bad, I hope. Maybe it's not going to be that bad. I won't say anymore.
I mean, we're going to pay for it one way or the other because the roads are falling apart. We look at the amount of money we've been spending patching.
Yeah, not repairing the roads is not an option.
So, I mean,
I ran on that, but I mean, but also, we don't need anybody telling us we're shoving something down their throat, right? And
correct.
That's not the point. We want them to be engaged and involved, make their own decision, and then we'll go to work.
Yeah, this feels pretty rushed right now.
Oh, we'll see. Yeah. But we have an option, so that's good.
Yep.
Okay. All right. And I wish I would have opened. I hope you all had great holidays with your families and happy 2026.
Same to you.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
It's good to see y'all.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
We'll be talking.
All right. Workshop A. Workshop B, review of the 2015 Sanctuary Master Development Agreement. Mr. De La Rosa.
Okay, Mayor and Alderman, at the next meeting, the sanctuary representative will be returning based on that. We tabled their rezoning request. What I've done is I've provided you the correspondence that came in from Mr. Zalaski back on November 20th of 2025. You'll see his letter, obviously, the concept plan that was presented along with some meets and bounds. What I'm going to do is go beyond that. I also provided you the sanctuary master development agreements, and I'm going to highlight some areas so you can kind of tell you what I'm looking at when I went through this and when I make some of the decisions when I'm revisiting plans or concept plans. This is fairly straightforward. If you look at the sanctuary, the Mustang Spring, you're going to see a lot of the same type of format. This is not rocket science. A lot of cities use the same master development agreement type. So you've got the master development agreement. You've got definitions. I'm going through. So get to page 7. Page 7 is actually the one that has the general land uses, general use categories that's applicable to all 3 tracts. Okay? You're going to see commercial, entertainment, lodging, multifamily, single family for sale, parking garages, or parking garage. So, Jacob, if you'll pull up slide 9. Interestingly, below it's in the second paragraph, the specific land uses permitted within each general land use category shall be any of the conditional permitted uses allowed under the following classifications. It says SF2. There's our zoning ordinances, there is no SF2. There's an SF21 estates, and there are estates in the east tract, the sanctuary east tract. Right. Actually, when I went through it, I can see where they were going to put estate homes. So that's an error. But you know, if you follow SF7 and it's a larger tract, these are minimum sizes. Nothing about larger, but they actually have something they call estates. That's the only problem that I saw in this. But you know, you'll see SF7, which is our single family all around town. And look at SFPH, which is, go to the next slide, slide 10. SFPH is your patio homes. Okay? Look at the lot sizes. They're 40 by 110. Yep. Okay? You can see what's in the concept plan, and it's 40 by 125. This is 110. You'll also see the multifamily mixed use, but the next slide is the single-family attached residential, which is 3.6 townhomes. Those are 30 by 100. 300, 30 by 100, which is 300 square feet. 3,000 square feet. It's getting late. That one didn't match any, but it certainly is listed in here, SFA. So the point I'm trying to make when you look at this and then you go to 4.03, it's listing that all of these land uses are available by development agreement in any of the tracts. I can make the point. Yes, sir.
So clarity moment. So what you were stating in simple terms is that regardless of what tract it is, this agreement, which is a real page turner to read, by the way, specifically states that they can build it.
Well, they can build it because in here it's got language.
That's exactly where I'm getting to.
Yes. So yeah, and let me go because there's a couple of other areas that you know when I look at these again. Go to amendments, which is page 8, 4.06 amendments. So when I got the request of a concept plan, and it's funny that the concept plan was written into a zoning ordinance. If I was the lawyer writing the ordinance, I would have left the concept plan out of the zoning ordinance and just referred it back to the development agreement. It's confusing because to change the zoning ordinance, to change any part of it, then you have to call for public hearings, which is why we called one for at the P&Z and the Board of Aldermen. If you put it in a zoning ordinance, it triggers a whole other set of statutory requirements.
Yes.
When you could have just referenced the ordinance going, hey, development agreement says I can change my concept plan. But here, this amendment says there's major amendments and minor amendments. Right? The concept plan is which? It's not defined yet, which is why I presented it to you. I had a conversation with you. I said, it's allowed by ordinance, it's allowed by statute, the development agreement, but it doesn't tell me what the definition is for a minor or a major amendment. Therefore, legal counsel, I plan to present it to the Board of Aldermen. And goes, I concur with you. You can't, if there's no definition, you don't have that authority to even interpret it in one way or another, which is why it was presented to you. Read this section, it tells you about those amendments and work. So they want to amend their concept plan. There's another section.
So while you're looking for that section or bringing that section up, so what I'm understanding is that when, forgive me, Mr. Madison, the gentleman that was here from Sanctuary.
Madison Insolman, yes.
Thank you. When he was here, and please correct this language if I'm absolutely off key, he was basically, based on this agreement and the ordinance, he was just notifying us at some point in time that he needed to do this.
Because the ordinance says he's got to notify you, and there's language that says that it's reasonable, there's no unnecessary delay.
So does this, I'm making a statement. So if we tell him no, let me just make a statement. If we tell him no, you're not doing this, are we exposed?
A Board of Aldermen, any elected body can determine what it's going to decide. It's not for me to decide.
How I understand. Let me restate the question. Would that, in essence, administratively expose us legally to other issues if we pause a development based on what they're doing? Could that open us up to a
My
problem?
response is that there's that potential.
Okay, that's what I need to know.
But contractually, he has to notify us, right? And he did. Yep. Then do we even need to vote on it?
Pardon me?
Well, then why are we even voting on anything?
Because it says that the Board of Aldermen needs to vote on it, and there's sections in here.
We're acknowledging it, just like in simple terms.
So we're acknowledging it.
Yes,
We're
sir.
voting to acknowledge.
Yes, sir. Because
Okay,
there are.
I'm going to have to.
Yeah. There
And
are.
this is all in the amendment you were talking about.
Well, in this amendments, yes, because it talks about concept plans in here. Owner may make major amendments or minor amendments to the concept plan as applied to such owner's tract upon notification to the village administrator. Okay? Major or minor. Well, which one is it? Because if it's minor, I can do it, and if it's major, it goes to you. It didn't define it.
And because there's no definition, it seems like all those questions, no matter what they are at any level, based on this context, come to us anyway, no matter what.
Yes.
I would be interested in knowing if we could sort of wish one of our attorneys was here right now, but I didn't know that earlier. I would be interested in knowing simply if we can renegotiate the entire agreement because they need to make changes, it sounds like.
Yeah, that's a conversation that you would need to have with him. I mean, I've had that conversation, multi-board in an open meeting.
I didn't follow that. What?
That would need to be an executive session.
Oh. Okay. Are you done?
I am done. Thank you. Thank you.
Nothing else to do.
You're up.
why
I hear you,
they
yes, sir.
don't really know what they're doing. It creates a my understanding, and I don't want to go over Josh past to feel that firm. So long as they don't change their business, it just makes it
That is correct, and the increase, it says in here, back on page 8, the very first paragraph. The village hereby approves the general land use categories identified on the conceptual master plan and the land use chart. Each general land use category may be increased by up to 20% without requiring a major amendment, so long as the total acreage of the project does not change. So it can actually increase, right? Very first paragraph on page 7.
But didn't they just sell a parcel of land?
If I understand, they're in the process of selling.
Is that a change?
But the way this agreement is, it's a covenant that runs with the land. So in other words, when they sold it, they're protected under this. Yes, sir.
Unbelievable.
That is a sweetheart deal that just keeps getting sweeter for them. That's great.
we're living the dream.
So,
It's a very one-sided agreement. I just say, I hope people will understand that when we're faced with topics like this, and the developers in the future, I don't think we would follow this thing. It's an agreement. The way I see it, the way I've read it, the fact that we got 400,000 total LUEs out of that $600,000 plan, and that's what we're going to give them, is pretty much however they want to divide that up, so long as we aren't changing. Our answer pretty much. And I hate to say that, if there's change to that, under that definition, that creates a change. It doesn't. The only thing we have is only one of the
yes, sir.
The developers themselves, obviously right now, we've got home builders, they're basically contracting for the developers plot land and buy it. The only thing you can pass on to their we can physical value of the people in the make it so uniform and better, maybe we can also suggest that small lots that benefits our way to do this. Maybe talk about other things. Talk to them a little bit about what they do about the system. We know you have the right to do it. Like the water rights. It's close to them. Well, we need to be here to do it.
Okay, if I, oh,
No.
go ahead. You want me to continue? Oh, hit the high points? I only got, I'll find more high points to hit.
Yeah, absolutely, sir.
On page 15, you're gonna see the term, the original master development agreement had it for 45 years, okay? That was in 2015. In 2022, which is in the first amendment, and it follows the next section, which is the blue color page that starts it, that was reduced from to 20 years, okay? Starting in 2022. They started 20 years in 2015. In 2022, they went to 2042, and that'll be in 12.01 section in the first amended agreement. So to answer some of your question, I think that when they, in the First Amendment, is the section that talks about the pit creation. When they did that, that opened the door to negotiate some. Okay, you did the same thing with Mustang Springs when we did the pit creation. You have an amendment, and we had a financing, which is how we put in the public safety facility, the police and fire, right? So we were better at it today. But I wanted to point out that it was reduced. There was a chance this amendment may or may not open that door for you. And I'll just leave it at that. When you go through the additional pages and you get back beyond the signatures, you're going to see Exhibit B and Exhibit C. Exhibit B is a conceptual master plan, very kind of generic, but there's language in here that talked about it some. But really, when you get Exhibit C, you're going to look at the exceptions and minimal specifications of the ordinances. In other words, we had certain development ordinances that were modified by this agreement. So there's a whole matrix that starts on page 214 in Exhibit C. Okay, and it looks like this. So in other words, if our ordinance was applicable, so you've heard something doesn't meet our current ordinance, might be our subdivision ordinance, road width, whatever, it's addressed in this section. The street light standards, all of that, everything's in this. So they were pretty comprehensive. They rewrote a lot of it, and then when you get beyond that, to the back of it, you're going to see the land use charts that they amended. This is all in the master development agreement, okay? So, so you'll see this, again, this is for you, following Alderman Dunge's suggestion that I try to have workshops for an education process so you're not deciding something that evening. So you'll have opportunities, you can take this, call me if you've got any questions, but the first amendment to development agreement, pretty straightforward. You'll see the item D on page 3, where they reduced the agreement from 2022 to 2042. That's the 20-year period. You're going to see on page 2, section B, owners have received approval from Encore for the installation of non-standard street lights. Village acknowledges and agrees that it's previously approved in the non-standard street lights. The reason it's in here, those non-standard street lights are expensive. They get damaged, they get hurt. We don't insure them. We replace them at our cost. Okay? So, and then you, at the top, you know, Village hereby accepts all roadway improvements, including without limitation, all asphalt roads, concrete sidewalks. I mean, it's just responsible for everything. So, I don't want to belabor that anymore, but I do want to get to the next pink page or peach color. That's our ordinance number. Ordinance number 2016.04, which is Plan Development District number 2. That is the South Track. There are 3 separate Plan Development Districts. The North Track, which is where the apartments and townhomes are at. The East Track, which is the residential area, which they'll have state homes out there, which is Willow Street at the far east end of town. The other side of FM 2268 by Bloomers is Plan Development District number 2. Okay, when you go to page 3 of 22 on here, You're gonna see attachments and amendments, and you're gonna see that Exhibit C is the plan development concept plan. Okay, pretty straightforward is in there. You'll see it in here, but what I want you to do is go all the way to the back, which is, go to page 13 of 22. You're going to see 12 and 13. You're going to see, especially on page 13, the Exhibit C, Area C Plan Development District. Okay? C was for commercial. Commercial isn't defined under our commercial. It's just defined as local retail. Okay? And I can show you why, because if you flip the page, you're going to see the land uses. This is Area C. This is an exhibit to the ordinance. Here's what's interesting. Area C is a plan development district commercial permitted uses. It's also got C for conditionals. Exhibit D, right underneath it, it says listing of allowed uses. Go to the second box where you see residential, and these are the ones I highlighted. You can have accessory buildings. You can have duplex, two-family, as defined by our zoning ordinance, defining the two-family dwelling. You can have living quarters on site with a business. You can have residential lot, and I have no definition for that. It doesn't fit up there, and it's not in here, but it is certainly listed as a land use. You've got four-family quadruplexes, and you got single-family dwelling detached. So it's interesting. You can have single, duplex, four-family, but for a three-family, you got to get a conditional use permit. Okay? It's just odd. You get 1, 2, and 4, 3. You got to come back to the board. Okay? You can see all of the others, everything from office, personal businesses, retail. All of these allowable uses are allowed in that district.
Which is pretty much everything.
Because
Other
this thing represents...
other than, unless I'm missing some, other than a mobile home.
That's correct.
Technically.
It doesn't have manufactured housing.
That's exactly right. So that's not a conversation. We're never going to have a conversation.
No. But somebody's going to submit for residential law for could potentially, how do I, what is it?
What is the IRC version of a law? That's the point. And that's what they're going to come at you.
We would have to look at industry standards,
Yep.
determine it, because it's in here, it's just not well defined, and it's not that, those land uses up there.
Okay.
Again, I don't want to take up a lot of your time. I wanted to present this to you. I'd be happy to discuss the others. I plan to do the very same thing with our Planning and Zoning Commission next week. And the reason being is, I had a conversation with the Chairman Price, and once I walked them through this and I sent him the link.
Yes, sir.
I never got any call back. So I think once I addressed his concern was the size of the lots. Mm-hmm. But when I went through that, it's allowed that you can have patio homes and such like, and these are slightly larger than was proposed. And this zoning here doesn't tell me which zone is up there. Only the master development agreement tells me.
So under your purview, when could this board, based on timeline, expect the representative from the sanctuary to reapproach the board based on the same conversation that was had a meeting or so ago?
It was tabled by the Board of Aldermen for the second meeting in January.
Which is coming up next week.
And that's why I thought it'd be best that I present you what you've got so you could understand what I'm dealing with when I'm looking at this.
Yeah.
And I have many conversations with our city attorney whether I'm interpreting this correctly.
Yeah, thank you for this, because I think it's going to make next week's meeting go a lot quicker. So it'll give me the time to ask additional questions with your help, so thank you.
I did miss this section, but there is a section that counts all of these, and it is based, and it might have been that plan development where it has discussions about plats and plat approvals. The count that we do based on page 7 of the development agreement, the number of units, isn't based on 364 or the 20% in any one. It's an aggregate of all three, and it explains that those counts are done at the plat process, which is why the concept plan And this is where some of the planning zoning commissioners, they thought they were looking at a plat. It's a concept plan. It's not a plat. They still have to go through the platting process. That's when we're going to determine, does it fit in this zoning ordinance or in this development agreement based on lot sizes? Are they meeting those? But if I see something that says we have 48 residential lots, I'm going to be, okay, it's here. I don't know what the sizes of the lots are going to be, and I may not be able to have that argument. You see, I'm not saying it just because they submitted. Here's why they're proposing the change. It said all commercial. And now they've decided they're not going to do all commercial, that they're going to have a residential component because they're selling it off. And probably that's what the buyer wants. And I am sure that they're reading these same ordinances that I am in development.
And I'm pretty certain that with simple language, with our quote unquote acknowledgement of the request is contingent on the sale. That's where it is, guys.
So we have, your hands are tied, our hands are tied. They can come in here and request whatever they want to do, and we just say yes.
Yes, sir. If the definition would have been in the development agreement that the village administrator can approve the concept plan as a minor amendment in accordance with the development agreement, I would have just sent you an email, but I would have approved it and moved on. Yep. It did not have that language in here. It does have it in other areas.
So we do not have an opportunity for their request for changes to revisit or potentially renegotiate any part of this agreement?
You can always have that conversation.
You can ask.
Yeah, and that's what Alderman Lasser was saying. You can always have that. I believe they want to be friendly about the, and again, this is, if they were going to sell the land and they just wanted residential housing, they could have done that through putting a covenant on the land. So, hey, you can't build commercial units. You're not going to compete against me, right? But I think where the reason they presented it to you is because it does require a change to the concept plan. I just didn't like that they put it in the zoning. They should have left it strictly in the development agreements, and we wouldn't have had to waste money on public hearings because it was already, this is agreement. We're coming on 11 years now.
Yeah, constituents, though, are frustrated that what they proposed 10 or 11 years ago versus what the lack of performance in construction and development that's happened that was promised. And then now all of a sudden, there's changes and I guess there's not density changes, just usage changes. But, well, there is a residential density change. And,
but they have to stay under that 364 total.
Yep. Yeah, I would just love an opportunity and a conversation to see if we could, I mean, I can't believe that got signed. Anyway, no comment.
So now, let me clear up something that was said by Mr. Madison Insolent at the first meeting. When I meet with Robert Selasky, just like I meet with a lot of developers, they're not always about development. It's about the agreement and what they're going to do, okay? I did not know anything about what they were going to do at the South Track until November 20th when I got the email. Right. So I corrected that the next day with him. He said, you're right. And the point being, if I would have known earlier, I would have told you what they were proposing. I didn't. That's the first time I got that email, which is why I forwarded it out. So, look, if I make a mistake, I'll own up to it. When I don't make them, I don't like to be accused of something that I didn't do. But I did spend some time going back through this before then, much more now. And Tim's already left, and he's right. They did look at the sewer, recapturing the reuse of the sewer plant. A year ago, early 2025, they contacted us. They said, hey, we're going to look at this. I said, I don't think it's your water. I had to go look it up. I did. That's how I found out all the sewer plant and the buffers and all the other requirements that we have to comply with. And the reason they did not move forward with reusing the wastewater for reuse, it was it's cost prohibitive. They should have done it early on. And the reason they wanted to use it, it's in very close proximity to the Hanks family playground.
Yep.
Okay? They wanted to bring the water over, use it at their playground. And that's very close in proximity. Even for them, they decided it was cost prohibitive. And they dropped it. Okay? So, but again, it is, and there's many agreements. There's the tourism, there's the wastewater, there's, I mean, when they met, they're talking about hotels and garages. I go, well, what do you mean garage? What are you going to do? They go, oh, it's in our agreement. Didn't say exactly until I finally looked at the parking garage, right? So, if there are room for negotiation, it would be those negotiations that you may have an opportunity because they'd like to get something from the village, or at least that's what it appears.
Right.
That's when you have that opportunity. Right now, we're not quite there, and
Neither are they.
and neither are they. There's not a market for it. Like I said, have a courtesy meeting. I plan to attend the meeting, have an agenda, just so I can prepare them what it is. And I may do the same thing with Mustang Springs as they start to move forward. As you heard, the wastewater treatment facility permit was approved. I did not know that until I heard it, so I'll have to go look it up on the portal. But I mean, that's what the gentleman said. Yeah, I didn't know. So, but again, I'm ready to move on to the next items.
Yes, is there any public comments on this one? No? All right, we're going to move on to number 3, consent agenda. Approval of the minutes of December 18th, 2025, Board of Aldermen regular meeting. Mr. De La Rosa.
The consent agenda, the December 18 meetings, staff is recommending approval.
All right, do we have any public comment? No? Do we have any discussion? No? I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda as written.
Alderman McDonald has made a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented. Second. Seconded by Alderman Sandor. Is there any discussion?
Question.
Question has been called. All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
All those opposed say no. Any abstentions? That passes 5-0. Item 4, discuss, consider possible action regarding any item removed from the consent agenda. There was not. Item 5A, discussion and possible action on approving ordinance number 2024-21 alpha and ordinance amending ordinance number 202421 adopting the rule of procedure, conduct, and quorum governance for the Board of Aldermen. This matter pertains to the meeting time change.
Yes, sir. You'll see in section 2, specifically 2.01, that we've, and I left it the strike in there just so that you could see it, or the general public. That'll be removed when I prepare the final ordinance. But changing regular meetings only from 6:30 to 6 p.m. Should you have on a regular meeting day, on the first Thursday of the month, if you want to meet at 5, it's a special meeting then, not a regular meeting. You see how that works. You know, it is staff's recommendation based on the conversations that we were authorized to prepare the documents that should be approved.
Got anything? Nope. Any public comments? All right. I will enter.
Next meeting, this takes effect the night that it's approved. It's in the language is in here. So the January 15th meeting will be 6 p.m.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. So entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve 5 alpha as presented.
Okay. Alderman McDonald made a motion to approve 5A as presented. Second. Seconded by Alderman Sandor. Is there any discussion?
Question.
Question has been called. All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
All those opposed say no. Any abstentions? It's 5-0. And 5B, discussion possible action on approving a contract for election services for the May 2nd, 2026 election with the Bell County Office of Election Administration. Mr. Villarosa.
Okay, Bell County Elections Office sent out this price quote. It's the very last page of this agreement. It's itemized expenses. And there is, okay, at the very bottom, cost sharing with all entities to be determined, based on ballot requirements. It's also going to be less if we have an election with another entity. So the school district has two positions, two incumbents. If they, for example, if they run for office again and don't have any challengers, they will cancel their election, right? Same thing we would have if that would occur. So, but we do believe that the library is having an election, so therefore there's still that opportunity. So we won't know the full cost until we know exactly when we call the election, what we've got, and who's participating in it. So if the school district gets involved, well, that keeps our costs down. I'm trying to get a better handle on how the election clerks and election judges are selected. Last year, when I had a conversation in my first year with Dr. Novotny, they tend to select. I think we found out that if there are city elections, we get to determine, I think because we share, that we can have those discussions. So I'm not advocating one way or the other. I'm just telling you that it's something that I was looking at. Not my first election in May of 2024. So we're 2 elections down. We're about to have a 3rd one. And I would certainly like to know who those folks are and how they're selected and why.
Agreed.
Therefore, I'm recommending approval of this agreement. Basically, we're just agreeing that these are we've got expenses that you're going to incur.
Yep. Public comment, got anything?
Simple question, based on our current budget, do we have a generic number put into election cycle already as far as our budget is concerned?
Yeah, I think we bumped up a little bit from last year. We were a little over 10.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's what I was,
It's not,
I knew it was a bigger number, but I just wanted, because I'm looking at, if we had this all by our lonesome, I'm looking at $7,000.
Yeah.
So I understand, no further questions. Thank you.
Because we have to pay the election clerks and judges that I don't think I saw in here.
Okay.
We pay our fair portion of their hourly rate.
What I'm saying is we have a budget for.
Oh, yes, so we have a budget,
That's
yes.
ready. I'm making that statement publicly. We have a budget for this. Thank you. No further questions.
No other questions, thank you.
Alderman Last. Is there any public comment? No, I'll entertain a motion then.
I'll make the motion to approve agenda item 5B as stated.
Alderman Dunch has made a motion to approve 5B as presented. Second. Seconded by Alderman McDonald. Any discussion?
Question.
Question. All right, question has been called. All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
All those opposed say no. Any abstention? That passes 5-0. And item 6.
Motion to adjourn.
It's 9:17. Adjourned.